one of the greatest days of my life. There's no drug in the world that can compete with that feeling. You have a rush of adrenaline, you have a rush of endorphins to your system. You just feel like a superhuman. And you just feel like it's your birthday, Christmas, New Year's Eve, every holiday just wrapped up in one moment. And that feeling is just the greatest feeling in the world, and I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Welcome to Podcasters of America, the voice of America's small businesses. I'm Bailey Sanchez, and every episode we bring you the stories behind the dreamers, the doers, and the difference makers. Today, I'm honored to feature Javi Trujillo from DC Muay Thai, a powerful force in the martial arts industry. Let's dive into the journey, Jav. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Bailey.
Well, I brought you on as the first guest for people who don't know. Javi is my better half, but I didn't start with him just because of that. He has a powerful story that I think a lot of people can learn from, be inspired from, and really show that you can build a lot out of yourself, no matter where you come from, and you can really make a difference, not only in your community, but like Jav's journey across the world. So Jav, tell us a little bit about yourself. You are obviously the owner of DC Muay Thai here in Gardnerville, Nevada, but how did you get here?
A little bit about me, professional fighter, also a firefighter by trade. How I kind of got started in the martial arts world was, I believe I was about 14, 15 years old. At that time in my life, I was really fascinated by this book called Fight Club. And I think for every coming of age kid, especially for boys, there was a quote in there that really stood out to me that said, how much can you really know about yourself if you've never been in a fight? And that's what kind of started my journey. I got the Tao Jeet Kune Do by Bruce Lee and started studying that. And I think what really set me over the edge to finally make the step of to becoming a professional fighter, I got to see my first UFC fight ever. Still remember to this day, I was at my grandpa's house and I watched Sam Stout from Canada, former kickboxing champion, versus Stephen the King Fisher. And it was the rematch. It was the main event of this thing. And before we actually did this interview and you sent me the questions, I rewatched the fight and man, I forgot how juiced it made me. Just seeing these guys just go at it, I had never seen anything like that in my entire life. These guys just going at it, punching each other, throwing kicks, knees. It was the first time I ever even heard of what Muay Thai was. And then going from there, transitioning into wrestling, takedowns, jiu-jitsu. It was just phenomenal. The energy that these guys were putting out, plus the crowd was just something that was just energetic. You know, you could just feel it in the air. And even me just watching it from the television set it completely changed my life. I knew at that moment.
So at what age was that, and what was your next step into jumping into this world?
I think I was about 14 going on to 15 because I remember it was in the middle of summer and I was playing football at the time. I thought that's what I wanted to do, go on to college to play that. But the moment I saw that fight, I knew something, it called to me. So I turned in my football pads the next day, told my coach, hey, I'm going to do this cage fighting thing. He's like, all right, man, well, good on you. And I found a local martial arts studio that had Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and then that's kind of how I started.
Was martial arts big in Gardnerville at the time when you started?
The type of martial arts that I was getting involved in with mixed martial arts, no. You know, and growing up during that time when I was telling people I wanted to do it, I remember going over my best friend's house, telling her mom that I wanted to be a cage fighter, and the look that she would give me would be like, yeah, I'm into snuff films. Like she just thought it was insane. Like, okay, Mom, that's great. But nobody knew what it was, and it was something that was on the fringe of society. And I think that's what I liked about it, because it was just almost taboo, you know. It's like you just throwing everything that you got at another man. No, there's a couple of rules, but there was no real rule set. I thought it was the realest thing to a fight, and that was something I wanted to test myself in.
Well, even being involved in the gym a little bit with you now doing Muay Thai, I know you've always made comments about people who are in martial arts are not your average Joe, normal life type of people. It's usually almost in a sense, without it being offensive, like the black sheep that are joining martial arts as either something to defend themselves because they were always picked on, or kind of the nerds, right? Something of the sorts.
Well, there's a a quote that a very good friend and mentor of mine, especially when I was living in Thailand, would always say. It's like there's two types of guys in martial arts. There's nerds, guys that used to get picked on, beat up, bullied, and this is a way to empower themselves and defend themselves, and thugs, guys who love to fight, guys that like to get into it, guys that were looking for trouble. And this is both a way for these two different people to meet in the middle and find discipline and strength. Yeah.
I found even just being in the gym with you, what, year and a half now, it seems to be not, again, not your average Joe people, but it seems to be the best salt of the earth people that you can find in the most random place. And it seems that everyone, and I'm sure you've seen it throughout your entire career, everyone just kind of molds together and becomes such a family because it is not a normal thing to like to hit people or get hit for fun. And so I feel like that almost blends people together in a
Absolutely.
sense.
Well, I think it's just the idea of doing something hard together, I think is just so embedded in our DNA,
Yeah.
especially when it comes from tribes, whether it be men hunting together, women doing things in the tribe itself, you know. When you get a group of people to pursue over one goal, and especially when it's extremely difficult, it does unify them in a way that I feel not a lot of other hobbies, not a lot of other sports, even though team sports I think is the closest thing, but at the end of the day, martial arts is just it's just you out there. It's your own personal journey, but we're all connect, whatever it is that strives us, we're all connected by this one discipline.
And I feel like too in this day and age, people aren't pushed to do hard things anymore. And I think that's why it seems so special being in this gym because people are not pushed to do hard things anymore. So to see people of every age, shape, size, male, female, pushing themselves and pushing each other to do something that you don't have to do at the end of the day is something pretty special to see, especially too. I mean, a lot of people in this gym come just because they love it, not that they ever intend on fighting, but because they love it and they like pushing themselves, which is a very special attribute, I feel like, for people to hold these days when everything's so easy. Things are handed to kids, things are handed to adults. Life's easy with technology, and people don't have to work hard if they don't want to.
Absolutely.
So back to your journey. So you started what, wrestling in high school? Take us from where you went there.
Yeah, so after finding a martial arts studio that did Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I started Taekwondo, was doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and still kind of being a fan of it while still practicing. I had started to notice in the UFC that the majority of their champions were wrestlers. So that's what motivated me to join the local wrestling team at our high school. Apparently, I was really good at it, ended up making varsity my very first season, and I fell in love with the grappling arts. And that's just kind of where it started to go from there. My wrestling coach asked me, he's like, what are you doing all this for? Like, you started real late in wrestling, kind of came out of nowhere, and I was like, I want to fight. And he's like, oh. I was like, I want to do like that MMA stuff? And I was like, yeah, I want to do that. So after high school, after I graduated, he introduced me to a coach in Carson City who used to fight in the UFC. His name is Lowell Anderson, one of the first guys, original students of the Gracies, went back when they were in Los Angeles, California.
So, I mean, other than being inspired by what you saw on TV and things of the sorts that made you want to fight, is there something deeper down that gave you that emotional pull to have to stand in this stoic position, even at a young age of 15, and want to learn how to defend yourself, probably defend your family, your friends?
Like I said, how much can you really know about yourself unless you've been in a fight? It's one of the most primal things as human beings that we ever experience. Even in the biggest sporting events, it could be a national championship event in basketball, football, or whatever. If a fight breaks out, everybody looks at the fight. There's something primal that is just embedded in our DNA. And I don't know what the calling was or what the search, but I just felt that it was something that was drawn to me. And as a young man, I felt like it was some way of proving to myself. You know, nobody pushed me to fight. Nobody, it was just a calling. And I just had to do it, whatever I could to pursue it.
So you get through high school, you learn wrestling, taekwondo, all the things. Take us through the rest of kind of your career and where how that led you to fighting professionally.
Well, right out of high school, I took my very first fight 6 months in after training with Lowell. Um, that was back in Reno in the early days at the Indian colony that they had out there. And man, I trained hard for 6 months. I worked out hard. I did the diet. I did everything all my coaches had asked me to. And when I finally got to what I was doing for the last couple of years, 3 years, it took me to have my first amateur fight. And it went great. I took him down. I beat the crap out of this guy for 3 rounds hard, broke his face. Yeah, guy came out looking like a pumpkin by the end of it. Um, and man, I just fell in love with it. Just love at first fight. There was nothing else I wanted to do more than fight. And luckily, you know, the reason why I ended up choosing firefighting was because some of my favorite firefighters at the time were also firefighters. And I thought being a firefighter would give me the schedule time to fight full time and still be able to make money. I think of guys like Chris Lytle is a perfect example. Stipe Miocic, he still, he became the UFC champion, and yet they made him put on this UFC heavyweight belt while he washed the toilets, you know. So I thought that'd be a good route. And then from there, it just kind of synergized each other. During that period, that was in 2008, 2009, we had a market crash. It was really difficult to get a full-time job after graduating from the fire academy. But because of my fighting and the connections and networking that I made in the gym, one guy that was working for the Forest Service offered me a job working wildland. So what I would do from then on out was work wildland in the summertime and then train my ass off in the winter.
How long were you doing that for?
I did that for about 5 years.
Okay. What was the next step in your career towards fighting?
Well, for a while, I was trying to go professional. I was living in California at the time. I was 5-1 as an amateur. I thought I was ready to move on to professional.
Is that a normal record to have that amateurs have before they try and go professional?
Well, back then it was a little bit different. I mean, I could have just went professional right off the bat, but I just wanted to test myself and make sure that I had the proper skill set. Um, but I felt for where I was at my age, especially at the time, I thought being 35 meant I was an old dude. So there was kind of pressure for me to get this dream going. And unfortunately, uh, I dedicated 6 months, those 3 fight camps, with each opponent dropping out the last week. So it was kind of hard.
How long is fight camp for listeners who don't know?
Fight camp usually is about 8 weeks long.
And what does that entail? Tell them about the intensity of a fight camp.
So once you get the call for a fight, you have, if it's about 8 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks is about an average camp, but you're taking about the first 2 weeks to kind of get the ball rolling, starting to get into light conditioning, doing interval sprints, strength and conditioning drills, usually with kettlebells, dumbbells, battle ropes, different things like that. And then we start increasing the sparring and grappling and all that type of stuff. And how it ended up being for my camp that I was out of at a standalone, you had to be able to fight 5 5-minute rounds straight before our coach made us feel like you were ready with a minute break in between. So if you were doing that, that's what you're preparing for. So you're fighting like a champion for a 3 5-minute round fight for 15 minutes. If you were fighting as a champion, that goes up an extra 10 minutes because our coach Jason Peets, really wanted us to make sure that conditioning was the last thing on why you lost.
That makes sense. And so, Jason, did he come from obviously from a fight background? I'm assuming why he was so educated and preparing you guys for these fights.
He had came up in the Lion's Den, which was Ken Shamrock, which is, if anybody's a UFC fight history fan, Ken Shamrock was the one who faced the Gracies in the first UFCs, made it so it was catch wrestling versus Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and it ended up becoming a long rivalry, and eventually became a UFC champion. But that camp was notoriously known for being a grinder. A lot of champions came out of that camp, but there was strict hard conditioning. You have had to grind, and you were fighting. There was no easy rounds in that camp, and Jason brought that philosophy to standalone.
What age were you at when you were doing that?
I was doing that from age 19 to 24.
That already shows if you look at 19 to 24-year-olds these days, I think it'd be far and few between that you would find that are that motivated just to put in that work, let alone at the end of the day, right? You're not really getting paid as an amateur. So just to say you want to fight and to have that pride of the work that you put in is very hard to find, let alone having yourself do it 3 times for people to drop out right before. So what do you do when somebody drops out then? You just wash your hands clean of it and look for the next one?
You usually cry. After you've been through hell and back 3 times and you put all this effort into something, it's a little bit hard and discouraging, you know? And I know why a lot of people dropped out. That was starting why I think social media was becoming a popular thing. And a lot of people start wanting to fight for different reasons than when I wanted to fight. You know, I think I used to call myself the middle child of the MMA era because the old school guys were just it was about proving themselves. It was about honor. And now all these new guys, they just want likes, you know? So if they know they're going to have a tough fight, they'll back out. They'll say they're sick. They'll say they're hurt. They'll say maybe just not answer phone calls.
Yeah. And I kind of want to touch on that as we get further through your story too, of just the importance of marketing yourself, not only in this day and age, no matter what you do, but let alone as an athlete, the importance of marketing yourself in the right light, but putting in that effort too, because everything relies on social media these days, whether you like it or not. And so I know you've told me a few times that the importance of it's whether you get a fight or not sometimes now is if your social media is up to par, you have followers, all the things. But before we jump to that point, keep walking us through. So you did your fights, you had people drop out, all the things. What was your next step since you were so discouraged? I mean, how can you not be discouraged from everyone dropping out? You had to make a step to get into that pro sector.
That moment, I think I was just so devastated about how much time and sacrifice I had put into this, and for basically to feel like I was empty-handed. I ended up moving on and moved up to Portland, Oregon, where I continued training jiu-jitsu. I kind of gave up the idea of fighting. And then eventually I just became really good at jiu-jitsu while training up there with this guy named Richard Rangel. I think just his passion for jiu-jitsu made me feel like, oh, wow, maybe I'll just be a really good grappler. My skills exceeded. I thought he was a really great teacher, not trying to mold me, but take my strengths and really develop me into a strong purple belt. When I was working up there as a engine boss or a fire captain for the Oregon Department of Forestry, I was just continuing just to train jiu-jitsu as a hobby, winning a lot of tournaments, kind of gave up on the idea of fighting. And then I decided to try and stay for a Pacific Northwest winter for the first time.
That was that.
I hated it. I'm
Yeah.
a big sun guy, if you can't tell. Every time September rolled around and all I saw on the weather map was just rain, 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 rain.
No.
It was depressing. I asked my coworker, because we were all sharing a barracks at the time in the winter. I was like, "What do you guys do for fun?" I drink mostly.
I especially coming from Gardnerville, if any of our listeners don't know about Gardnerville, Nevada, we're very blessed to have all 4 seasons. And I know for a very short time in my life, grew up in Bakersfield, California, and that was miserable. It was sun or fog, and it was hot and in the hundreds by the middle of the day. So we're so blessed where we're at now. So I can't imagine going to isn't it like 2/3 of the entire year is nothing but rain? No. Yeah. Couldn't do it.
Yeah, so I decided to go back to Thailand. So
Had you been going to Thailand yet?
yeah, I started going. I followed a coach of mine I went for the first time in 2012. And a mentor of mine, his name's Glenn Cordoza. He was one of those coaches at Standalone. I went with him just for the first time for 3 weeks.
To train or just to go see it?
Well, just to visit and see, but I really wanted to train because, like I've been saying all this whole interview, I was a wrestler, grappler. My striking was crap. I mean, I could box a little bit just to get inside to wrestle a guy, but I wasn't the greatest striker. And honestly, my biggest fear was meeting somebody that I couldn't take down and then them just beating me up on my feet. So I followed Glenn, who I think is one of the most superior martial artists that I've ever met. If anybody's interested, if you go to like Barnes and Noble or anything like that, and you can look in a martial arts section, any instructional book, majority of them, you'll see that my coach Glenn Cordoza is the author of all those. He took all the photos and he went like Fedor Elemenko went to Russia to go study with him. And for the first 2 weeks, he explained to me that nobody would talk to him because he was a foreigner. Yeah, they'd be going in the shower room, everybody left. And then after they started seeing what his skill set was and how attentive and how respectful it was, they started to teach him. Went and lived with BJ Penn for months while he did BJ Penn's instructional book. Randy Couture, um, lots of guys from Thailand, Eddie Bravo from 10th Planet. He wrote his books. So he was just a wealth of knowledge, not just as a martial artist, but just as a philosopher. So I learned a lot from him when I was traveling with him to Thailand.
What a special treat. I mean, who gets to say that they've gotten to have a mentor like that to guide them through such a intense journey in the first place?
And I think we just had such a deep connection because he had pursued martial arts for the same reasons I did. It's a journey of self-discovery,
Yeah.
more than just belts, titles, fame,
Yeah.
likes, followers.
Even through my short little journey of definitely not being pro, I've discovered so much about myself, and the mental strength that you build is something I've never found anywhere before.
Absolutely.
In these four walls that we're in right now, is I've discovered more about myself here than I have any other place in my short 28 years of living. So I can't imagine having somebody like that too guiding me into that journey.
And it was a real honor and a treat, you know. Uh, yeah, so in 2015, I'd been going on and off to Thailand, been going 2 months, 3 months, training Muay Thai there. And then in 2015, decided to stay all winter so I could avoid it. Was training at the gym that I usually was based out of in Bangkok. It was called Fighting Spirit, run by this guy named Ozzy Dan. And then that's when there was this organization called Full Metal Dojo. Now, at the time, MMA was illegal in Thailand. The Muay Thai Authority, which is the government sanctioning body, was afraid that it would take away from Muay Thai, like it would, basically take away the, how do you say, um, authenticity and the tradition that is
Well, and
Muay
for
Thai.
people who don't know, and I only learned this really when I went to Thailand with you in January, explain to people the history of Muay Thai and why it came about in Thailand and why it's so sacred in the first place.
So the history of Muay Thai, all it means in English is Thai boxing, right? Thai style boxing. And roughly the earliest lineage that we can pull back to is roughly the 1600s. It was first being recorded. Now, the martial art was used for military soldiers as a way in hand-to-hand combat when they were fighting. They were always at war with the Burmese, the Cambodians, and it was a way for them to hand-to-hand fight when they would lose their swords or anything like that. And then over time, it started to develop into a sport when then they eventually first used to use wraps of cotton to fight with each other. Then once the development of boxing or Western style boxing gloves were adopted, and then eventually it became the sport that we call Muay Thai today.
So, I mean, I guess it explains a little bit right there why it's such a protected, I don't want to say activity to downplay it, but such a protected thing in Thailand, why they didn't want to break the sacredness of that.
So art is a way of life, and it's something that if you really go down into it, it is a deep spiritual journey. It's very entwined with Buddhism. It's very entwined with the culture that is Thailand. They do things like a white crew to make sure that there's no bad spirits inside the ring, which is just a dance to honor their gym and then to make sure that everybody's protected.
Which is one of the most beautiful things that I saw when we went over there. We watched a few Muay Thai fights. One being in the oldest Muay Thai stadium in the world. And it almost brings you to tears when you watch that because it's watching that sport over there, even though it's people hitting each other in it could look so violent. People respect each other so much in that, and watching the white crew happen. And then even after the fights, how the fighters respect each other, they bow down to each other. It's such a beautiful thing. And I think that really ties into just the Thai culture that I got to see for the short time. It's so respectful and so, I don't know if loving is the right word, but respectful, I think and it's something you don't understand until you go, I feel like.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
absolutely. And yeah, I mean, that's why I loved it so much. It's an integral part of who I am, you know. And yeah, just to get back, I was teaching jujitsu at a school. It's called Fighting Spirit, and in exchange for starting to teach jujitsu, because as MMA and grappling arts started to become popular, and I was a blue belt or a purple belt at the time, the gym owner offered me, instead of paying tuition, that if I teach in exchange, I could train Muay Thai for free.
And what was the price at that time for training?
Oh, probably about $100 a month.
Okay.
And then if you wanted private pad holding, it was, about roughly about $28.
Which probably is a lot of money to you at the time when you're going over there solely just to fight. And what were
Yeah.
you working at the time other than training?
I was hot shotting.
Okay.
I was a hot shot firefighter, so I'd save up all my money during the summertime, and then I would go over there.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, ended up being a good deal. But yeah, in 2015, the promoter started coming around to the local gyms, and like I said, it was still illegal at the time, saying, "Hey, we're looking for fighters that are potentially interested in doing this event. We're calling it Full Metal Dojo."
Mr. John Nutt, correct?
Yes.
We'll touch on Mr. John Nutt too. I had the honor of meeting this man when we were over there. And
Yeah. He's a guy you should probably have on here too.
absolutely. He's a fantastic gentleman from Montana, correct? And lived in Thailand, the last 15 years?
Something like that, yeah.
Incredible guy.
Real old school expat type guy.
Yeah.
But he was trying to start up this thing called Full Metal Dojo, and went around to different gyms, seeing if people were interested in fighting in this mixed martial arts event that was being held in downtown Bangkok.
And how was he getting around this if MMA was still illegal?
Luckily, corruption in Thailand is affordable corruption. I can say it like that. But luckily, the building that we were in was basically allowed to do whatever it wanted to do. So they were going to legalize this. Basically, the promotion was cage fights in a nightclub, and there was a nightclub still going on while there was cage fights.
That's the most Thailand concept I've ever heard in my entire life.
It was pretty wild. And at the time, it was still, I think there was FMD 10 was the first one I fought for. So there was 9 fights before.
So Full Metal Dojo 10.
Yes, it was my first one. I think I actually have the poster up there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll show that. I'll be sure to insert that into the video so people can see. Well, and explain too, when I show that, John, the promoter, was theming all these fights, right? After old 80s movies.
Yeah, so like every cheesy 1980s action movie you can think of was a theme of it. One was after the movie The Warriors. One was the Predator theme.
And what was yours?
That one's Big Trouble Little China, but that show was called Big Trouble Little Bangkok. Right. The one that I fought for the world title, they would call it Bangkok exploitation, making fun of 1970s black exploitation movies. So everything had a little fun twist to it, a theme. We did I think we also did one on, what is it called? Like The Warriors, and then there was a movie called
You're asking the wrong gal. I don't watch movies.
No. It's like post-apocalyptic. It's with gosh dang it, it's gonna escape me here. And how I'm getting old. But yeah, they were just fun shows. And but yeah, so he came into the gym, asked the gym owner. He's like, "Hey, we're doing this show, and it's MMA, but we're using universal rules, which is even crazier than UFC rules, which means you can kick, knee, stomp a grounded opponent. You can hit him in the head, you could soccer kick, and do pretty much whatever you want. And you're in a 6x6 meter cage, which isn't very big, so it presses the action. Nobody's really moving. You got to fight, and we're holding it in a nightclub in downtown Bangkok. Do you think anybody interested in doing that? And they look over at the manager, and he's like, "Ah, man, that sounds pretty crazy, but I'll be over there. He'll probably do it. He does that stuff." They came up to me and they told me that whole spiel. And I was like, "What? I can soccer kick people and do all that?" Like, hell yeah, why not?
Yeah.
So I ended up deciding to take my first, and it was a legally pro fight. Like it's all
So
my
he got it it was legal because it was in that nightclub then.
Mhm. And yeah, then I beat the crap out of this guy in the first round. Ended up submitting him with a rear naked choke. And yeah, it was just wild. It was a great time. And then did it the same again the next year. And then I think that's when.
So did you stay in Thailand after that?
No, I ended up going back and working one more fire season and training hard at jiu-jitsu at Rich's gym, Impact Jiu-Jitsu back in Oregon. And then I decided to come back right away, knowing that there was an opportunity. I finally made my dream. I was a pro fighter. So it kind of motivated me to continue it again after figuring out that I was going to give up on it. And my second fight is what kind of changed my entire life. Got ready for another fight. Originally, I was supposed to fight some Iranian guy down from Phuket. Then 2 weeks out, typical story, pulls out. Pretty bummed. Worked pretty hard for it and just set me back into old pattern with how I felt when I was living in Chico. And then some guy out of nowhere decides to take the fight. And it's funny enough, before he took the fight against me, he showed up to the gym while I was teaching. And at this time, I had moved on. Fighting Spirit changed managers. Dan had moved somewhere else in Thailand. So I moved to another gym called Bangkok Fight Lab, where I ended up coaching there. And yeah, it was pretty funny. This guy shows up in my gym. He seemed kind of like a funny dude. Also an American. Seemed like he was from the South or something.
Did he show up to train?
Yeah, he showed up to train. And this is before I knew I was fighting him. And thought he was just I could tell he looked pretty fit, but I guess he came from a wrestling background. And I can tell he never trained jiu-jitsu because he didn't know how to tie his belt. Talking with him, seemed kind of a little arrogant, this and that. I'm like, all right, whatever. So I ended up putting him with a younger Thai kid that I knew. And the kid that I put him with, he came from a very wealthy family. And I've noticed something about the wealthy family kids. They're very soft, like marshmallows, so soft. And I won't say his name because now he's a tough dude. He's in the military. He's a solid guy. I won't want to say his name because I don't want to make fun of him. But at the time he was soft.
We can give credit where it's due now then.
Yeah, but I put him with him, and he started bullying this kid. And I'm like, "What the hell, dude?" And I was like, "All right, whatever." I guess he didn't get it because when I was at Rich's gym, I was an enforcer, they call it in jiu-jitsu. So if somebody new comes into the gym, they're a little bit rough with the members. As an enforcer, it's your job to smash them, to put them in their place. I was between training with Jason and training with Rich. I had a combination of wrestling and jiu-jitsu, and it was a very roughneck style. So if somebody gave me the okay and the green light to be real mean to somebody, I took complete advantage of it. So afterwards, he rolled with Tan. He was bullying him around. I rolled with him, and I throttled this guy. I crushed him. I put the gi in his face and ripped it across. I put a forearm in his neck, and the guy still didn't get it. He rolled with another guy, and I continued to do the same thing to him. Very strong dude, but I knew I could, we call it cooking him, where you wait for a really strong guy to kind of wear himself out, and then you kind of slowly, like an anaconda, just crush him.
So did this guy at the time know he was fighting you?
No.
Okay.
A couple days later, John calls me,
The
and
promoter.
the promoter, John Nutt, and he says, "Javi, we found a guy that'll take you. His name's Ryan Felder." And I was like, and I was on the cell phone, and I look over as this guy's in the gym.
No way.
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah. So So the owner of the place, Morgan, another American guy who expat we call him. So usually it's like Western guys that just tired of America or tired of Europe or wherever they come from, and they live and they stay. They live in Thailand. And Morgan's like, well, he paid for 2 weeks. Like, I feel bad if I just kicked him out. I was like, no, I don't like this guy already. If he wants to stay and he took the fight against me, fine. He can stay and train. I
Is
don't
that even a thing where they'll put two people up against each other in the same gym?
know.
Okay.
It ended up becoming a story in itself. I had a lot of local MMA bloggers and interviewers. They all interviewed me about the post fight thing too, because they just thought it was a wild story that for the next 2 weeks of the final part of the camp, both opponents are training in the same gym.
Wow. So he stayed there for the 2
He
weeks.
stayed, and he was a mad talker, and I'm a bad talker back. I know I'm a nice guy and I'm very polite, but when it comes to fighting and somebody trying to take something from me, they ain't my friend.
Mhm.
So for the next 2 weeks, me and this guy proceeded to talk shit to each other across the gym as I'm getting ready. Every now and then, periodically, I'd see him staring over at me, and I'm like, "Keep watching, bro. The more you watch, the better I get at whooping your fuck." Sorry, I'm not gonna cuss something.
We'll limit it, but we can bleep it out.
You can bleep it out. But but yeah, and it was just nuts. My teammates were like, "Dude, we can come." I'm like, "No, let him stay."
Yeah.
And we had the weigh-ins and everything like that, and it was pretty wild because John got Jason Mayhem Miller, who was an icon and somebody I admired because he had fought all of my heroes. He fought Sakuraba, submitted Sakuraba, fought GSP, fought anybody and everybody. And he had a TV show on MTV called Bully Beatdown, which was a show I used to watch growing up. Ever since I got into MMA, I was like, I'm gonna be on that show one day. I just want to beat up these guys, dude. And he was one of the main commentators, and he was the guy that basically met in the middle for us when after we got done weighing in. Me and this guy almost duke it out on the weigh-in thing. We're starting to yell at each other. Jason Mayhem Miller's all pumped about it. He's like, yeah, I like this. These guys got some good energy, and yeah, we're ready to fight right there. And yeah, so there was a lot of heat building up to this thing, and you guys could go on YouTube and see it, and you can feel the
We'll insert a clip of
yeah,
this fight.
it's quick, don't blink. But yeah, so we finally get in the cage with this guy, and I guess he was originally training out of Malaysia. His coaches came from Malaysia to coach him, and next thing you know, I thought I was going to take him down, beat him up, make him pay. I was going to make it last because I wanted to just hurt the guy at this point. And for some reason, this guy once, Dana Bullen, who's a good friend of mine and was the ref, when he said fight, this guy decided to dart at me, just run straight on. I had never seen anything like that in my life. And I don't know why. I felt life had slowed down. I just took a sidestep and just hit him with the right hand. And this guy just dropped like a sack of potatoes. And I
It's
got
an incredible clip to watch.
yeah, and I could have stopped there. But after the amount of crap this guy talked to, I was like, oh, dude, I got to get a couple more shots in. So I just threw some hammer fists at him. And apparently it woke him up. And then after that, it was over. I got my hand raised. All my teammates ran in there and were like, dude, that's like hitting a hole in one. Like that was wild,
Yeah,
man.
no kidding.
Yeah, and the crowd went insane. Just the energy that was in that nightclub that night was just wild. My whole team, we swept. Everybody won. Yeah, my whole life just changed. They were live streaming on Facebook at the time, and the clip went viral. People made memes of it. People did all sorts of stuff. Jason Mayhem Miller after the thing, he's like, dude, that was some stuff like right out of Bully Beatdown, dude. I saw this Mexican guy and this white guy. That's why I said making MMA great again. I was like, this is some south of the border stuff, dude. This is wild. And he went out there and just fucking clobbered this guy.
Yeah.
And it was just a dream come true as a kid from a small town that this is what I wanted to do. And now all of a sudden I'm like a cult figure, a myth, a legend in Thailand.
Yeah. How did that change your mindset? And was it like how you see a lot of younger successful athletes, they almost run with the ego, they kind of blow it, or were you able to take a step back and actually put a plan behind it?
Well, after that, I was just in the excitement of it all. And about a week after of hanging out and celebrating and getting to hang out with Jason Mayhem Miller all week, and him bestowing a lot of marketing and business side of it. The gym that I was training at came to me and said, "Why don't you just stay and we'll give you a job coaching full time, and you can just keep fighting." And so I was at a crossroads in my life. I was like, I in my firefighting career, I became an engine captain at the age of 26, which is almost unheard of for how young I was. Um, I had called my chief, at that time, the only way you could get through to somebody was through Skype.
Oh, the Skype days.
Yeah.
The
So I
Skype
phone
days.
called him through Skype. I was in the middle of the night, and I told him what kind of had happened. I mean, at that time, everybody on Facebook had seen it, and all my coworkers, and they shared it, and they shared what was going on. And he's like, "Well, Javi, how long can you think you can do this fighting thing?" I was like, "Well, the average career for a guy, it's about 35." And he's like, "Okay, well, you can be a firefighter until you're 55. I think it'd be best if this is your dream. You should pursue it as long as you can. And if you really need a job, I'll always hire you back."
That's incredible. I feel like a lot of people in their career don't, I don't know if you can call him a mentor just because I don't know the guy. But to have somebody in their corner, even if they're not family or direct friends, is huge, right? In business and pursuing your career, you have to have people like that in your corner. And I think not to go off the path of what we're talking about, but pursuing those people in your life that you can trust and will be in your corner for your best interest, not for theirs.
Yeah. And it was great. So yeah, I had resigned, and I decided to fight full time. And the next fight, I trained really hard too, and it was also another phenomenal fight. I'd won in the first round. By then, I'd already been gaining some momentum, and yeah, just continued on. And just to go back a little bit, that week hanging out with Jason Mayhem Miller, and we had had a conversation one night. We were out having some drinks, and he had said, how long have you been training for?" And I was like, "Oh, about 8 years." Like, "Wow, that's good. That's impressive." I was like waiting for him. He's like, "But everybody else that that's been training that long, they're probably good too."
Yeah.
So you got to understand something. I've been in this game for a long time. And if this is your dream and this is what you got to do, you believe in yourself, right? Absolutely. Great. Everybody you're going to face from this point on is going to be really good. You could be winning a fight. You could be beating the crap out of a guy for 3 rounds. All of a sudden, some spinning elbow, some head kick comes out of nowhere. You slip. Doesn't matter. You get choked out and it changes. It's that quick. Honestly, at this point, it's just a bet.
In a sense, just like a- any business career, right? Anything can happen.
It's a risk.
Yeah.
It's a risk. But if you're willing to believe in yourself and bet the chips on yourself, why wouldn't you convince other people of the same of you?
And I think a lot of people don't have someone to tell them that these days. People are too scared to step out of their comfort zone, right?
Absolutely.
And as we get through your story, people will understand why we're doing this interview because you took that risk, it got you where you're at now.
Yeah.
But a lot more people need to realize that, gosh, even not to make this about myself, but I did my first small little Muay Thai fight this weekend, and never once did I think when I came into the gym a year and a half ago that I would ever be doing that. In a sense, I came in here to just clear my head, and I made that step out of just to be courageous, to prove to myself something.
Yeah.
And this week after the fight, I feel like I could take on so much more. So you need people in your corner, or even just the people you surround yourself with. It really, people don't realize the impact that people have around them. You are who you sit at the table with. And a lot of people think I should be nice to these people. I've known them for a long time. They don't realize the impact. And I've seen it in my own life. I'm sure you have too. You sit at a table with the wrong people who don't have your best interest in mind, and you too for them, you'll end up in the wrong place.
Mm,
You'll and it may not even be the wrong place for some people, but you won't end up in a successful place with people pushing you.
absolutely. Absolutely. There's a saying that the 5 people that you surround yourself with, that's who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that wholeheartedly. That's why I try to surround myself with killers when I was in a fight camp. I try to make sure people were better than me.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing if in business or whatever. If you're the smartest guy in your group, that means you got to leave your group. If I was the best guy in my fight team, I shouldn't be there.
Absolutely.
I wanted to get beat up in every camp. So when I went to the fight and I beat the crap out of it, I was like, holy crap, dude, I'm awesome. And it's a heavy
Absolutely.
in itself when you go home and you're getting beat up every day and you're not winning rounds and you're not doing your best and you're getting submitted and getting head kicked and all sorts of stuff. But then when it comes to fight day, it's like, okay, I won and I won easy. Well, I just dominated them. It's okay. I'm around the right people.
Yes, and I think that's a good learning lesson for everyone. Just surround yourself with the right people, no matter what you're pursuing. You could be pursuing even moving up in a grocery store, starting as a clerk, right? But you have to surround yourself with the right people who want to push you to be, and you have to be willing to open up your mind to seeing what those people above you are doing and take it in. You learn a lot more with your mouth closed than with it open.
Yeah, exactly. But at that point in my career, I knew if I was this is how I was making a living. I had to figure out how to make more money. And luckily, Jason explained to me, he's like, you see, all these people that are sponsoring this event, you should find all those people and tell them to sponsor you. Whatever it is, you get as associate discount or associate sales. You sell their product, you get a cut of it. You want to see maybe if they really like you, maybe they'll just give you a lump sum of money. You should be making a poster showing, hey, if you sponsor me for this amount of money during my fight camp, I'll make these posts for you on my Instagram. I'll put you on my banner. I'll put you on your shorts for this amount of money. And that's how you make a living at this. And you got to tell your story. Everybody likes a story.
Which is the point of this podcast, right?
Uh,
People want to know your story. We're beyond the days of just saying, hey, I've got a new product, buy it from me. It's called heart marketing.
uh,
One of the few things I did learn from college, and I'll be proud of that. People want to know the story behind the product, behind the service, everything like that. So that is one thing I really try and push just to other people around me who are starting businesses and taking what I've learned from business. You have to tell your story in order to sell whatever you are selling.
Absolutely. You are the product. And at
Yes.
least that in fighting, that's what I realized more than anything. You are the product.
You're the product in any business you're in, right? Even with my business, I put on a rodeo, and even though my rodeo sells itself, if people don't like me, they're not going to sponsor my rodeo. They're not going to give $1 to me if they don't like me. You are the product, whether again you're in a grocery store, you're a CEO, whatever it is. People have to like you.
Absolutely. And from there on out, I had to get out of my comfort zone. I had to go out and network, socialize. I'd go to any big event, whether it was a martial arts or not martial arts, talk to people. And eventually that's how I was getting sales. I pride myself, and John Nutt says it himself. I think I saved a clip on my Instagram from him saying that Javi sells tickets. Javi sells more tickets than anybody when it came to MMA in Thailand. And because I would go to these events, I'd tell people my story of how I was a firefighter, just like I explained to everybody here. And people are like, hell yeah, I'll go watch you fight. Do that there. That's two tickets there. Hell yeah, I'll watch you fight. That's another 4. My private students, when I was coaching, they'd bring their friends, they'd bring their family. And that's how every fight, my crowd and my fan base got bigger and bigger and bigger. And over the years, I ended up living over there for 5 years. By the time I went and fought to be the welterweight champion of Full Metal Dojo, I was one of their major stars.
That should be a lesson to anybody. Don't be scared to tell your story. Everyone has a story. A lot of stories might be the same, but there's very few people who will share that story with those around them and say, hey, these are the trials and tribulations that I faced. This is why I'm here. It may not be the worst story that people have heard or the best story that people have heard, but it's showing that you have purpose in what you're doing. And a lot of people, I feel like, don't either have purpose or show their purpose
They,
to
sh-
those around them these
they
days.
don't show their purpose because they don't believe in themselves. And how is anybody, whatever business it is or whatever thing you're trying to pursue, if you don't believe in yourself, how is anybody else going to believe in you?
Absolutely.
And so that's when I know when I resigned, I knew that I had to dive head in first, 110%. And I learned how to be a salesman. I learned how to be a proper businessman. I had to learn how to sell myself as a coach, sell myself as a personal trainer. And this is how I was making a living while I pursued my dream, and yeah, eventually became their champion. And for the organization, instead of making belts, they make swords. And the last fight in 2019, fought against a really talented Muay Thai guy, ended up taking him down and submitting him within the first round. And just pulling out the sword, raising it above my head, John yelling my name as the champion, was just a moment in my life that's just ingrained.
Yeah. And for anybody who's watching the podcast right now, you can see the sword right here behind me. I'll also insert a clip of the sword, a full samurai sword, right?
Samurai sword, the guy who smith the sword makes swords for the Thai royal army, who
Wow.
basically these people, they protect the royal family.
Yeah. That's incredible.
Yeah.
So fast forward, you win these fights, you're at the top of your career. What happens next?
I get kicked out of Thailand, unfortunately. And for such a big high, 2 weeks later, I was told I have to leave because what are you doing here?
Yeah.
Are you working? And unless you don't have the proper documents and the visas, Thailand doesn't like that. So I ended up having to move to the UK while I was waiting for my visa to re-up. And this is roughly in 2020. I had an opportunity to fight in bare knuckle boxing for a world championship as well.
In the UK.
In the UK, I got to fight in the London O2 arena, the same arena that Mike Tyson fought in, the same arena that, major superstars in music industry go to play.
How did you, since bare knuckle boxing wasn't really, in a sense, in your realm, how did you people go through pressure all throughout their life, and of course this is a different kind of pressure, but how do you face that pressure, and let alone especially in business, because this was a business for you, how do you face that pressure head on?
You have to have a passion for it. The passion has to outweigh the fears. The passion has to outweigh the anxiety. It was something that I wanted to do once bare knuckle boxing became a thing, because at that time MMA started to become mainstream. Thanks to people like Conor McGregor, but everybody wanted to be an MMA fighter then. Everybody and their mom wanted to be an MMA fighter. So what became fringe was now the norm. And now the new fringe was this bare knuckle fighting. And like I said, I'm the black sheep or the guy that's on the outskirts. I wanted to be on the fringes of what society was allowing. So I thought it would be a great opportunity to test myself again in a new realm, and became fascinated with it. And when I made my debut, I ended up having to fight for a world title.
Talk about pressure.
But I enjoyed the whole process, and that's what was different. I learned a different fighting style. I learned a lot. I lost, but hey, whatever. It's you being able to bet on yourself.
Yeah, and what's that lesson you can take away? You're going to experience loss all the time in business and in life, and I think it's about your mindset right after it.
A loss isn't a loss. It's an investment in the future.
Yeah, a lesson.
It's an investment.
Yeah.
You're going to learn a lot from a loss. And that's how I've taken every setback in my life, is an opportunity to learn.
Yeah.
And hopefully I was ready to continue on, but then COVID happened and things were locked down. The whole world was stopped. There was no more fights and I was running out of money. So I decided to come back to Gardnerville.
Yeah. So I guess that leads us now to the start of DC Muay Thai here in Gardnerville. So explain the setback that you had at that time and what led you to this, what we're sitting in right now.
Well, just at the time, I didn't think there was any fights going on. Fortunately, what I was doing um, got me back into firefighting. A lot of my friends that I, was in that career field with went along, were in captain's positions and all this stuff because they continued their career while I took my 5-year break. They knew how hard I worked. They knew what I was doing. The fact that I was willing to pursue my dream, I think, is what got me back into it, and which was make it easy for people to hire me because they knew I was goal oriented, I was disciplined, and I just needed to do something while I had this big lull in my fight career. At the time, I also knew I was going to be a father, so that would became my focus. And yeah, could got back into firefighting and trying to be a father. And yeah, this is kind of where I ended up being, and started coaching here and there in places like Carson City and a little bit in Reno. And wasn't moved back to Gardnerville at the time. I was living up in Reno. But what led me down here is when I got a job down back in the area, moved down here. Um, you know, then when I came to DC Jiu Jitsu, which my friend Matt runs, he's the black belt here, it had been bugging me. He's like, "You want to start an MMA team? You want to start a striking program?" And at the time, I was like, I'm kind of busy, man. I got a lot going on career wise, and yeah. And then I guess I had a pretty bad separation from my son's mother, and the only thing I could do at that time to kind of get my mind off of the heartbreak and stress of it was to train. I got a call from somebody asking me if I was interested in taking a fight in Ethiopia, and everything before that in my life, if I just take an MMA or I take a fight and I win, somehow life always works itself out. So I trained hard. I was training hard every day, running, hiking, lifting weights, training all the time. And then one day just doing a jiu-jitsu practice, got some good solid hard rounds, and went with a friend of mine, Ryan, who's also a black belt, and we trained together for years since I was 15 years old. And took me down, and then I had a snap in my knee. Coming to find out when I went to the ER that I had tore my patella tendon, which apparently is a really traumatic injury. Um, and I was temporarily disabled. I was bedridden. And on top of the other stressors in my life, not being able to work, going through a very bad separation, and now not being able to do the one thing that I'm really good at that's defined me up to this point was mentally and spiritually one of the roughest times in my life. It was the first time in my life in a very long time that was still.
Which a lot of people will not let themselves be.
No, especially a guy like me. I made my whole life off of my physicality and movement and all that. To be trapped was extremely hard. And, fortunately my firefighter job, they were still paying me my base wage, but most of the time a lot of us make our money off of our overtime, and that wasn't happening. I had to figure out how to make extra income to pay for my medical bills, a lot of the issues I was going through, just trying to basically support myself and my son. And the level of stress was extremely difficult. But just like me leaving my career in Thailand, I had to find a way. And with a lot of soul searching, I'd realized you got to do something. So being bedridden, I just was on my computer. I started taking online courses, learned graphic design, learned how to build and design websites, started learning a lot about artificial intelligence, how to use ChatGPT, became a certified prompt engineer, doing anything I can to find a way to make money while not being able to physically use my body. And for somebody like me who wouldn't say he's the most tech savvy guy or book smart guy, I felt like I was forced to step out of my comfort zone once again, like I did when I was 15. And
Too, just to pause you right there, I think showing people again that when you step out of your comfort zone, it may not be stepping out of your comfort zone in something you're passionate about, but sometimes just out of desperation, you have to step out of your comfort zone for to better your life, to better your child's life, to make money, to have a living. And so sometimes some people don't like to do things that they're not comfortable with or something they don't like, but you have to make uh strides regardless. And I think a lot of people need to be reminded of that. I know, just we're human. I have to be reminded of that sometimes. I may not like stepping out of my comfort zone, but you have to, regardless, when other people are depending on you. And even if it's just yourself, you have to show yourself that you're still able to do whatever you have to survive.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And yeah, so then I started learning about web designing, building content. Luckily, I was pretty social media savvy just from my career. I started helping out other businesses and they were paying me decent money.
Mm.
And I was like, well, if all these people are satisfied with my work, why can't I apply it to something for myself? And then that's when I decided, I mean, I could finally walk again to take Matt up on the opportunity to start something here at the gym. So I took all that web design, I built my own website. Um, I figured out like a lot about how marketing works, especially when it came to the gym industry, read a lot of books on the gym industry, martial arts, and how to basically launch a gym. And started with a good offer. I was offering free gloves, offering a 2-week trial, and finding somebody. Luckily, I had a friend who knew a little bit of Muay Thai, enough to demonstrate the moves correctly while I was still disabled, and would have him demonstrate it to the few students that came in. And that's how we were starting to get along. Unfortunately, the years and years of being a coach and making a living, I had figured out a really good structure to, resonate with people and to make sure that they were learning properly. And I think at the beginning I had about 4 students. Then eventually those people told other people, and that became 8 students. And from there, brought in more friends, and eventually I had 20. And to the point now where I'm at, where we have about 70 plus students.
Incredible. What goes into continuously building this gym up, especially too, Muay Thai is not a known sport around this town. We're a small little farm town. And to have 70 students now, seems like everybody is either doing what, CrossFit or nothing almost. You're really pushing into a market that wasn't here.
And then also you just like for the years and years of being in this type of industry, trying to show that we're a big, tough MMA gym or a fighting gym, you're not going to get people in that way. So I had to pitch it and market it more for fitness and make it more that like this is about learning and making a comfortable environment for somebody who's never trained martial arts. I know majority of people they want to try something new, but if the environment doesn't feel inviting, they're going to be too scared to come in. So I try to very make sure that everybody, regardless of age, size, weight, felt comfortable coming into this gym. And I think that's why we bred such a good reputation in the community. And then over time, especially when some people have been with me for a year or two, just seeing their progress, a lot of people have lost weight. A lot of people have gained newfound confidence in themselves. A lot of people have made friends out of here. And I think that started to speak for itself. And that's why it started gaining more and more momentum to the point that we won Best New Martial Arts Studio in town.
Being able to watch you this weekend, you formed our fight team here at the gym. I've been blessed enough to be a part of that. And to watch the full circle moment of you coaching a fight team this weekend at our fight in Reno. Um, Made me emotional, and I'm not even the one who is standing in that as the coach and someone who went through your journey, but it's quite incredible to show that with resilience and just being mentally tough and putting yourself in that position. It was a full circle moment to watch you coach all of us this weekend on the mats and watch us really put our hearts out there like you did eventually years ago. It's a really inspirational moment, just even for myself as someone who shares a life with you, someone as a business owner, um, just to pass along your passions to people and they listen to you, they respect you. And to see that come full circle was truly a blessing.
And it was a hard transition. Like I said, I had a lot of things going on in that time of my life. I had to accept that I was probably no longer going to be able to fight. I had to accept that there was a lot of different things that were going on in my life and a lot of negative feeling and overwhelming. I had lost a lot of friends that were part of the fight community during that time. The gym eventually just became the same how fighting was for me, a positive outlet. And taking all that negative energy and just trying to focus it and make it something positive has it become something more than just me trying to get through something. I've created something in the community where people can benefit off of such a devastating time in my own personal life.
Absolutely. And I think when you can really take a step back and realize things aren't about you as much as it's easy to think that life's hitting you hard or why did this happen to me? When you can take a step back and realize it's not just me. I have so many things to offer the world. I have so many things to offer people in my community. Um, and finding your true value and what you can give back to other people. I mean, I know just from my experience in business, when I can give back to other people, sometimes it may sound like it's a task or a chore to give back, just to give back. It truly is the most rewarding thing as a business owner because you bust your ass, excuse my language, to make a successful business, whether it's for yourself like you have, um, or with multiple business partners, and to be able to bear the fruits of your labor with other people is truly the most unique gift that you can't explain to other people until you experience it.
Absolutely.
So with that, Hav, it's a long, inspirational story. What if you could give one final message to our listeners, um, whether it applies to business, to self growth, whatever it is, what would you give to somebody?
I would say whatever it is that you're if you're trying to be an entrepreneur, a businessman, or just trying to pursue a dream of yours, you have to know that you're going to be met with a lot of challenges on that way. Um, some harder than others. And just knowing that there was a saying that a friend of mine, when I was in the middle of myself recovering from my injury, a good fighter friend of mine had said that God doesn't put us through something he doesn't give us the strength to get through it. And every time you're met with a setback, whether it's in business or your personal life, instead of saying, why me? Ask yourself, what is it that I'm trying to learn from this? What is it I'm trying to grow from to get me to that next step? And sometimes that path doesn't take you to your initial goal that you think. Sometimes there's an obstacle that you have to get over, and sometimes doors close. But if you're just so focused on thinking that this is what I am, or this is what my business needs to be, or that whatever this is, and you realize that I am not the things that I do, but I am how I do them. And as long as I do anything with passion, with purpose, and with gratitude, when one door closes, you have to know that another one opens. Just don't be so focused on the door that's closed to not notice the door or the window or whatever it is that God has opened up for you.
It's all about perspective. That's all life is. It's about perspective. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. I think it will hopefully change the perspective of some people, their mindset in life and business and all the things. So if people want to find the gym, if they want to find you, what's your website? What's your social media handles?
If you want to check out our gym, you can check out our website. It's going to be dcmuaythai.co. If you want to find me personally, you can find me at javitrujillo.mma on Instagram. And if you want to take a look at our gym's Instagram, it's Douglas County Muay Thai.
This is Podcasters of America. I hope you guys got a lot out of this, as I did. So we will see you for the next episode. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, social media, all over the place. Make sure to share this with somebody. Share the message. This is truly a powerful one to start off with. So we will see you next time for the next episode. Thanks, guys.